Midlothian, hey, I'm here with Lindy Beaty. She is the Republican primary candidate for the district attorney's office for Ellis County. She is currently serving the public, and I'll let her explain that. Lindy, why don't you give us a little background on yourself?
Sure. So I'm originally from San Antonio. That's where home is. Went to high school there, went to college there, went to law school in Houston, graduated from there, came back to San Antonio where it was home, and I started prosecuting at the Ellis County Attorney's Office, which is a very tiny county south of San Antonio. So I was there for about 3.5 years, loved it, but was getting paid $29,000 a year, and my student loans were a little bit more than that. So I eventually told my boss I was going to have to look elsewhere. He completely understood, wrote me a letter of recommendation, so it was great. Found an opening here at the Ellis County District Attorney's Office for a juvenile prosecutor. I interviewed. I got the job that same day that I interviewed, and I started to work here in September of 2004 for then DA Joe Grubbs. So came here, moved to Waxahachie in 2004, and was a juvenile prosecutor for about 10 months. Then I became a felony prosecutor, prosecuting all kinds of crimes. And then for about a period of about 4 years, I was the sole prosecutor doing all of the child sex crime cases. So I did that for a while. Then as the cases became too many of them, because Ellis County was growing, and unfortunately those kind of cases were increasing, we all kind of split into do general felonies. So then I did anything from drugs to murders, child sex crimes, kind of anything in between. Did that till about 2014, and then I became the misdemeanor chief prosecutor. So I was sort of mentoring and supervising the newer attorneys that were coming into prosecution. Did that for maybe about 1.5 years. Then I moved back to be the chief felony prosecutor, where I did that until I left in 2019. And then for the last 4 years, been working as a criminal defense attorney. So my practice really has been criminal law, basically.
Okay. So it might be fair if somebody said that the bulk of your career has been as a prosecutor.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been, 18.5 years, almost 19 years as a prosecutor, and then 4 as a defense attorney.
Okay. So you've been prosecuting longer than some of the people you've had to prosecute have been alive, especially when you were in juvenile court.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow, that's impressive, I'll tell you. So what do you think are the most important things that you can address if you are to be elected?
So, one of the main reasons that I'm running is because in the last 3 years, there's just been some inefficiency, in my opinion, that didn't need to happen. So what I mean by that is cases were taking a long time to go through the system, right? So for you to be efficient, you have to have as many cases in as out. So meaning you have to file as many as you're disposing of or even more to keep that balance even. And the reason that that's very important is because when you sort of lose control over that, you end up with being like a Dallas or something like that, where if somebody gets arrested today, it's going to be like 3 years before their cases get filed. Who knows what's happening? If you want to keep people and start the punishment, it has to be sooner than later. You can't, and I give the example of like my kids, like if my son did something today and then I punish him 3 weeks from now, the cause and effect goes away. And it's kind of similar when you're dealing with the criminal element, right? The closer in time to the offense that you get them in, back in the system over and over again, one, you're going to get that case through more efficiently. And two, I think the punishment is going to be more worthwhile and more fit the crime. So, I've had cases, and just to give you, some real world examples, like I've got, had some misdemeanors, a possession of marijuana, probably one of the simplest crimes that you can have on the spectrum, right? And those cases were taking over a year to just get filed. They shouldn't take more than 90 days. And so what that does is it creates unfairness, right? The goal and the actual constitutional duty of the county district attorney is not to seek convictions, but to see that justice is done. And for me, justice delayed is justice denied on both ends, right? Because if you are a victim of a crime and that case is taking a long time, you're wondering what's going on with my case. Does anybody even care anymore? Is something going to happen? You're just kind of left in limbo. But likewise, if you're a defendant, you have a constitutional right to a speedy trial, right? And that's not happening. So if that's not happening, you get into violating people's constitutional rights. So it's not fair to both sides of the equation. So the better practice is to get them in and get them out. So one of the things I would address, and the reason I believe that that's occurring, is because there's been this high turnover rate at the County District Attorney's office. In the last 3 years, there's been 45 employees that have left that office. That's out of a staff of 55. That's nearly a 90% turnover. No business can run efficiently and effectively when that's happening, because you're constantly in a training mode, training new people, and then you get to the point where people who have not been fully trained are starting to train the new people that are coming in, and it just becomes more efficient. It's not their fault. I don't blame anybody actually that works there, because there are great people that work there. They just need to be better trained, have people that do know what's going on to train those people to be more efficient. And so that creates a backlog in our court system, and that's a huge, huge issue right now. You know, and I know, you know, COVID gets blamed a lot for all these backlogs. Here's the reality, right? COVID happened in March of 2020. Everything kind of shut down for about a 2-week period until the judges figured out a way to get us back into court. And that was through doing things on what we call WebEx. It's kind of like Zoom, but same thing, through video conferencing, right? And the judges were really smart about getting the jail cases in sooner than the other cases, right? Because they knew we can't keep these people in jail, you know, forever. This is going to create a real backlog. So we were into court about a couple of weeks after we shut down, and then grand jury stopped for about a month and a half, and then it picked back up in May of 2020. So cases were still going. I certainly was in court in person during all that COVID time as well. I was still going to the jail. My firm, we never stopped working during COVID because people were still getting arrested, just not at a greater frequency like they were before because people weren't out on the street so much. But people were still getting arrested, which meant we still had to go to the jail, still represent them, still move the cases along. So if you just look at the numbers and compare the 3 years prior to 2021, those numbers are significantly lower. And so like I said, I believe the reason for that is that constant turnover, because in terms of position, the DA's office in their budget has increased their staff 23% over that same time frame. So if you have more people, you should be doing more. In addition, particularly on the misdemeanor end, Judge Gallo became a judge for the County Court at Law number 3 in January of 2021. So in misdemeanors, you had 2 judges and 2 courts to funnel those cases through. So there shouldn't be any backlog on the misdemeanor end, and those cases are the ones that are really, really backlogged. And that creates a problem. In my opinion, it also creates a public safety issue when you have people out on the street for thefts, for assaults, for DWIs, drug cases that are not coming back into the system in a fast enough way.
Wow, okay. So were you to be elected, what kind of short-term, immediate, say like 90-day plan do you have in place?
So number one is day one is to figure out truly how many cases are there. I know the number of cases that are still pending in the courts because I can do open records requests, which I've done, to figure out how many cases are there. The numbers that I do not have access to, because I don't work there anymore, is to figure out how many cases are there that the police departments and law enforcement has brought in that haven't been filed, right? So I don't know that number. I believe it's significant, but that's number one. Figure out truly how many cases are in that office. Number two, once we figure that out, I'm assuming that we're going to have a full staff. I feel very confident in my ability to attract quality people and maintain those people. Plus, like I said, there are great people that work there already. So it's not like, you know, everybody's going to get fired. That's not how it works. There's great people that work there already. But I think getting all the positions filled is also going to be a definite priority day one as well. So when those two things happen, the next step is going to be to reach out to all of the players in that criminal justice system. It's not just about us, right? We're just one cog in the wheel. You have law enforcement, you have the sheriff's department in the jail, you have all of the judges, you have the county clerk, the district clerk, the defense bar, the bail bond companies. I mean, all those players have a role in how efficient the system works, right? So you have to reach out to them and say, look, here's the real problem. This is what I want to do. I need you to help me, and this is how I want to do it. So I think there's ways that it can be done. Essentially, it's going to require asking the judges to set aside a little bit of time to be able to get us into court a little bit more often, which is the tricky part because everybody is backed up. But I believe if you just reach out, they will certainly do it. So I don't believe that that's a problem. The other thing, because I've done this job for so long, I'm going to do it myself, right? I'm going to get back in there in the trenches. And listen, I'm not naive to believe that I'm just going to be back to being a prosecutor day in and day out, right? I understand that the county and district attorney job itself is largely administrative, right? There's a lot of administrative stuff to do. But if the priority is moving those cases, I need to get back in there. I need every staff member that's available at the office, every attorney, to get back in there and have full caseloads so that we can move those cases more efficiently. So I think it can be done.
Okay. Well, assuming you can get that accomplished, what are your long-term plans for the position?
Well, I really do think that to have significant increases in that efficiency, it's probably going to take 18 months, right? It's not going to happen overnight, because this didn't happen overnight to get it to where it is right now. So I think that's probably going to happen, I would say probably a good 18 months before we see the true effects of putting all those things into place. Once that happens, we can then continue to move cases more efficiently through the system and get us back on track to where we can sort of catch up, because we really do need to catch up. I have ideas about wanting to have every case that comes through, as soon as there's a victim on a case, it's going to get a contact from our victim assistance coordinator like right away, and they're going to keep monthly contact with those victims just to see where they are, to make sure we keep in contact with them. Because a lot of times when you're talking about cases that have victims, the problem with taking so long on a case is that time is always on the defense's side. Because when the longer a case takes, the more you may lose witnesses. You know, especially on assault family violence, everybody's back together and everybody loves each other again. So it's all good for that period of time. So you got to get them back in. And I think part of that is making sure that they're okay, that they've got things in place so they're not scared to come to court, or if they need, you know, housing, if they need job skills or something like that, you need to work with them. And now that we have the Heights here between Waxahachie and Midlothian, that place is going to do, I think, wonders for making sure that those victims get the assistance that they need, which then will keep them in the system a little bit longer with us so that we can have better outcomes. So I think that's sort of the key there. I also want to make sure that our investigators at our office are going to be a little bit more helpful to law enforcement. So you know, right now, all law enforcement always had my cell phone when I was at the DA's office. I got calls at 2 in the morning, at 3 in the morning. I've been out to the advocacy center at 3 in the morning for an interview because they just had a murder. That's going to continue. Every officer is going to have my cell phone number so they can contact me. But additionally, there's some agencies that need our help. In talking to law enforcement and all the chiefs around the county, you know, especially, you know, for an agency like DPS, right? Those guys are getting called out to the border, they're getting called out to Austin, and then when they have an accident that they need to go investigate, there's not that many of them left around. So I think they'll be able to reach out to us and our investigators so that we can go assist them. Or if it's a smaller agency that catches a big case, we're going to have our investigators go out to assist them if they need it, just to be an extra set of eyes, ears, and hands to assist in those investigations.
Wow, it sounds like you've really put a lot of thought into these future plans. What would you say very unique Lindy qualities would you bring to this position?
So for the longest time, I pride myself on a few things. One, being able to get along with pretty much any type of personality, right? I think that's very important when you're dealing with all these different personalities in the criminal justice system. And so I've been always able to maintain positive relationships with people. Doesn't mean I agree with people. In fact, if you're agreeing with the other side all the time, you have a problem, right? But everybody knows that at the end of the day, I'm still going to be fair about it. And that's very important to me. It's very important that you understand that when you come to our office, you're going to get a fair shake. But that doesn't mean we're going to be easy on you, right? I never had any issue throughout the entirety of my career asking for a life sentence for a child molester or an ag robber or a drug dealer. Not a problem at all. Didn't skip a beat. But they were going to get a fair trial, right? Because I want to make sure that case isn't coming back on appeal. It's a done deal at that point. So I think it's very important that you be tough on crime. And I've been able to do that throughout my entire career. I do challenge anybody to contact anybody that works in that courts building now, or that anybody that has worked in that courts building, to ask them about me. I think you'd be hard pressed for them to say anything negative about me. I don't think anyone's ever going to say, oh, she was soft on crime, she was very lenient. That's not who I am or what I'm about. But they will say that I was fair. You know, I've had some screaming matches with law enforcement officers before and actual screaming matches with defense attorneys before, but I still maintain contact with them now because it's not personal, right? It's not personal to me. Everybody has a job to do. Sometimes we go about it differently, and like I said, we're not always going to agree. But I've always been able to maintain those positive working relationships that I feel is very important. The other thing that I believe is unique to me is that I do have sort of full circle experience. Like I said, I've been a prosecutor for a long time, right? I've had that experience. I've done defense work now for a significant amount of time, for about 4 years. And that experience has been really valuable too, right? People say, well, you know, you're gonna, again, you see that you're gonna be soft on crime. No, I'm not, but you have to see the other side. For me, justice is about equity. It's not equality. And what I mean by that is, let's say you take two people who have a DWI, right? No prior criminal history. And so equality would say you give this person 10 days in jail and you give this person 10 days in jail. That's equality. Same crime, same thing. I believe justice has to be equitable, meaning it kind of just depends on the circumstances and the person. So you can't give somebody, you know, again, if somebody has a prior criminal history, you don't give them the same rec as somebody who'd never had anything before in their life. Again, and money too. If you're going to look just at fines, you know, I'm not going to give somebody who's a millionaire a $10 fine because that's nothing to them. But a $10 fine to somebody who works, you know, at a fast food restaurant may be a big deal. So there's where the equity comes in. So you kind of have to look at everything in that way. And I think being a defense attorney has given me that perspective on justice. The other thing in terms of full circle and full circle experience is I know what it's like to be a victim of crime, right? I've had my car burglarized. I think a lot of people have. That's not a huge deal. But back in 2009 in San Antonio, my father was murdered by some guy who was on parole in another state who was on meth, right? And so my family went through that system in San Antonio. It took 3 years for that case to ever come close to being set for a trial. And then the day before the trial was supposed to start, I get a phone call, and I'm still working at the DA's office, that says, hey, can you drive down to San Antonio because this guy's gonna take a plea at the last minute. So, you know, up I go. So it was a very traumatic experience for my family. You really do see how crime doesn't affect just the actual person that got hurt. It affected our entire family, permanently affected our entire family. And so I take that experience with me too. So, you know, I really honestly get offended when people say, well, I think now that you're a defense attorney, you're gonna be soft on crime. I am not, because I've had that experience, right? I don't want people to go through that experience. I know what it feels like to lose somebody in that way, to wait on the system to get that justice that you want. Sometimes it's not always the justice that you want, right? We were satisfied with the eventual outcome of that case, and that guy ended up dying in prison like 5 or 6 years after that. But, you know, so I've got that full circle experience when it comes to justice, right? So I think it's very important to have all those qualities. I also firmly believe in the Constitution. And I've told people before, sometimes the Constitution sucks. And I say that because it doesn't always give us the result that we want, all right? Because, you know, if you have a case where evidence was obtained illegally, you know, that evidence should be thrown out. But what if that's the evidence that really does make the case, right? It sucks, but it's the right thing to do, right? You can't just pick and choose when the Constitution applies or when you think somebody's rights, it's okay to violate somebody's rights because it's a very serious crime as opposed to a not serious crime. I don't think you can do that. So I believe those qualities really do make me well-suited for this job.
Wow. Okay. So given your personal background and your experience as a prosecutor, were there any cases that you were involved in that influence the way that you think about some of these tough decisions that you're going to have to make?
Yeah, so I would say, you know, one I can think of is a case that I actually lost. You know, you tend to learn more, I think, from the cases that you lose than the cases that you win, right? Because if you won, you're like, well, I did it right. You know, if you lose, you're always looking for like, what could I have done different or better, or what was I missing, right? For prosecutors, it's very easy for us to get tunnel vision. I know I've had it before, right? Because if that's all you're doing is the one side, you're just looking for the ways to make it fit. Sometimes you want to put that, you know, square peg in the round hole so bad because you believe so much in the case, right? And I had this case, and I'm not going to mention names because, again, it was a not guilty. But it was a child injury case, not a sex crime, just an injury case. That trial took a solid week. We must have had 30-something expert witnesses. It was awful. And the jury, took a while to come back, but they came back with a not guilty. And that one, hurt, really, really hurt, because I felt I had failed that kid, and that kid was going to go back to those parents, and I thought, oh my God, to the point where I was like, I feel like I might have to stalk these people, and because I want to make sure this kid's okay every day. I want to follow him at school or whatever. So cases like that really do stick with you to make sure that you're doing the absolute best that you can. And that's all I ever want to say at the end of any trial, is that I couldn't have possibly done anything more or different, right? I did everything that I can. I prepared as much as I could. But that case, again, just teaches you that you can't win every case, right? You're not going to. If you're winning every case that you try, it's because you're not taking the hard cases to trial, right? I can choose which ones go to trial and which ones don't. I plea the ones that I think suck. I don't make offers on the ones I think are great, and I win every case and I look good, right? I don't believe in doing that. So it's cases like that that teach you to work a little bit harder, find a different way, and be a little bit more objective, right? And that case was from a while ago, so I think I've learned through that case. One of the other cases that I thought was maybe just more interesting, where we kind of did figure something out, which was after that case that I lost, was a child sex crime. It was a child who had been adopted from Africa, and her adoptive dad had been molesting her for a significant amount of time. We had an issue with that case because we did not know exactly how old this girl was. And to make it a first-degree felony, she had to be under the age of 14, right? So we had to, I was Googling and talking to people from Africa, trying to call different embassies to figure out how do you guys, because they don't really some areas don't celebrate birthdays like we do. It's not a big to-do, right? And so trying to figure out how do you guys date kids, or how do we know this? We ended up having to get our forensic odontologist, which is like a dental guy, that had worked at the 911 World Trade Center and identifying bodies and things like that, to come in, do some x-rays, and he came to testify with his brilliant PowerPoint to explain why this person was under the age of 14. And I got a conviction, he got a life sentence stacked on a 20-year sentence, and it was day for day. So that was really great. But that, again, taught us that we have to figure out ways to do something and think outside the box to get something accomplished if we really believe in that case. So those are a couple of the cases, that really stuck with me. And I probably could tell you the facts of every case I've ever lost. Probably I couldn't tell you the ones that I've won, because those are the ones that really stick with me, right? Because you wonder, what happened to those kids, or what's happening in that family, or what's going on in those people's lives.
Well, Lindy, I wanted to thank you for spending the time to visit with me and to educate the people of Midlothian. As we wrap up, I wanted to give you the opportunity to speak directly to the people of Midlothian and tell them why they should vote for you.
Yeah. So, citizens of Midlothian, I have spent my entire career in the pursuit of justice. I have worked tirelessly to get the job done, and I have done it well. I believe in establishing positive relationships with those around me, with the people that work at the office, because I believe if people are positive, they're going to want to come to work. They're going to want to do good if everybody's got the same mission and the same idea of how to get there. This can be done. I know that it can be done. And I make those promises to you. And you know what? If I don't fulfill those, you need to vote me out in 4 years, because that's how this process works. But that is my commitment to you, that we're going to remain tough on crime. You need to be safe in your neighborhoods. You need to be safe at your workplace. Your kids need to be safe at their school. And for us to be able to do that, we need to maintain efficiency and effectiveness in that office. I do want people from outside the county to fear us here. I want them to continue to fear us so that they don't come to Ellis County when they're thinking about doing their crimes. They can stay in Dallas, they can go wherever else they want to. Don't come here. So I encourage you, I'm always happy to answer any questions that you have. I'm completely an open book. There is no topic that is off limits to me. So I'd appreciate it if you come out and visit with me. I am having a meet and greet at Union 28 here in Midlothian on February the 1st from 6 to 8. Come talk to me, come meet me, ask me any question that you have, or you can learn more about me on my website at lindybeaty4da.com or on my Facebook. So I look forward to seeing you. I look forward to meeting with you, and I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Lindy, once again, thank you. And Midlothian, thank you for spending the time to learn about Lindy. I urge you, as always, to learn as much as you can about all the candidates so that you know who you're voting for. And again, stay classy.